This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you an exclusive interview with D. Thara, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, on envisioning urban planning and infrastructure development for Amrit Kaal. The interviewer is Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR correspondent.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed a post-budget webinar on the subject of urban development with focus on planning. It is the sixth of a series of 12 budget webinars by the government to seek ideas and suggestions for the effective implementation of the initiatives announced in the Union Budget this year. And to discuss on urban planning, development and sanitation in detail, we are joined in studio by Mrs. D. Thara, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
With an incentive of 15,000 crores that has been declared in this year's budget for the high-end urban standards, how does the government envision areas of spatial planning, transport and urban infrastructure?
15,000 crores is a big money. This is the second year when such an incentive has been announced. Last year it was 6,000 crores and this year it is 15,000 crores. The government is using this incentive to bring focus to the urban planning in the states and cities. So when we saw the last year budget announcement, I must say the 13 states rose up to the occasion. Many of them did amendments to bring in the urban planning to the focus in their states. And so in that, they also talked about transit-oriented development. Therefore, they were looking at their transit corridors. How do they densify that? How do you bring in differential bylaws and so on and so forth? This has actually brought in a catalysis of urban planning in the states. That is one thing. Second thing is there was also spawn cities, the water management angle, which has been integrated into the urban planning. We asked, how are you going to protect your water bodies? That entails survey of water bodies, then listing them, then actually drawing up a plan of protecting them using urban planning bylaws and then rejuvenating them. Though last year the focus was there, we did find a lot of starting troubles in identifying the milestones and goals, which in this year we will be completely bringing out a very, very clear guidelines and milestones to be achieved. So I think the first year was catalysis. The next year is, taking it to a conclusive action level. So it has really worked well. In fact, there's a lot of enthusiasm. More than 1,000 plus nodes of urban planners and state stakeholders participated. Means almost 3,000, 4,000 people participated to listen to this, what is happening in the space.
So you mentioned about that how there was an increase in the budget allocation or be it the identifications of milestone. I also want to mention here that in post-budget seminar, Prime Minister raised two main questions on how can we properly use the expertise available in the private sector for urban planning and develop a center of excellence that will help to plan us on a new level. In your opinion, how can we address both the concerns wisely?
I think Prime Minister Saab, when he talks about urban planning, he understands it so minutely that he has suggested very concrete steps for taking it forward in a very constructive manner. The weakness of the existing urban planning ecosystem in terms of personnel processes have to be addressed. So that means gaps identified and that has to be addressed. That kind of action will also be incentivized by center to the states. This urban planning and urban design are sort of new subjects for governance. I don't say new, I would say not as old as it had to be. Therefore, the whole focus is how do you leverage the existing expertise in the private sector for achieving the goals of urban design and urban planning in the cities. So we can do it by several methods. One is we provide a platform for the private experts to meet the states and cities. Another is we also can empanel them to interact with the cities to provide them whatever help they need at a predetermined arrangements. So these are a few ways of getting them. But the point raised and getting them into the fold of urban planning for cities is super important, without which I don't think we can bridge the gap of capacities in the urban planning scenario.
And here I also want to note that after the success of Amrit, how significant Amrit 2.0 can become for the clean drinking water in cities.
See, Amrit 1 was about providing drinking water supply to the cities, 500 cities which had 100,000 plus population. Amrit 2 is for all the cities and Amrit 2's mantra is water secure cities. See, water secure means you don't need to worry for the next coming years that where will the water come from. It has to be completely planned. There has to be a water balance drawn for each city. And then based on that, every city understands where its water source is, how much it is, how many households are getting served, what is the leakages, what is the non-revenue water, how do we ensure that the source regeneration takes place so that source gets shifted to the cities. If you integrate these aspects into the planning, then we can reach water secure cities. So Amrit 2 is about water security more than water supply. Water supply is one part of it, but water security talks about recycle, reuse, treated used water to be taken for industries or any non-potable uses, and trying to draw a balance between what we have and what we will do with that water. Therefore, every city has to become aware of what do they have. And we do have rainfall. 85 centimeters rainfall is possible in India. And such a country with heavy rainfall, though in some areas we don't have, but most of the areas we do have rainfall. If we are able to harvest, we are looking at our groundwater, we charge our aquifers, we get back to, rejuvenating our wells, rejuvenating our water bodies. Amrit Sarovar is all about that. Then we may be walking towards water security, and that is being addressed on 3 pillars in Amrit 2. One is there is infrastructure gaps in water that has to be bridged to provide water to all the population in all the cities, 4,900 cities. And the second thing is treating wastewater. We never call a water waste, it is used water, and reuse it for industrial or any other purpose so that the freshwater demand goes down. Third is rejuvenation of water bodies so that the source is preserved and brought back to the city. So these are the 3 pillars in which Amrit 2 works, and it is about water security.
And urban development, if I'm not wrong, in Amrit Kaal is not only limited to Tier 1 cities, but a special focus has been given to infrastructure and planning for Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. What is in the pipeline for these cities, if you can?
See, planning is quintessential for any sustainable development. Unfortunately, we didn't deepen that layer of activity into our governance very well. And that is where the Honorable PM's vision for urban planning is bringing it to the focus. It is a state subject. But the kind of focus he has provided for this in the last 2 budgets, though urban development was always on the focus under this government, but I think urban planning focus is the right step to actually harness the synergy of all the missions, various missions, water mission, Swachh Bharat mission, and all the missions into the planned sustained urban scapes. So now in that situation, I think urban planning is very fundamental to every city, but the nature of planning will change from city to city. For example, if there are Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, we have to look at where is the activity going on. There is a lot of economic activity going on. Getting the logistics right for those activities. We have to map their water bodies, their green areas, and then integrating it into the planning. Affordable housing. The nature of housing may not be several multi-story there. Vis-a-vis a very metropolitan city where the land is very, very costly, then you go for a vertical development, encourage more development on the busy corridors through incentivizing FSI and so on and so forth. But the nature of planning may differ, but it is quintessential to include planning elements in all these cities. But the level and nature of planning will differ.
And in the context of this answer, I would like to know especially how city centers and old city areas will be developed or redeveloped, because we have to balance our cultural heritage and traditions and aspirations for modern cities as well. So how the department is and the ministry is planning for this?
See, as I told you, since it's a state subject, what we do is a facilitating role or a catalyzing role. So if you have to rejuvenate city centers, we'll have to pass on the knowledge which has been already done in some of the cities to the other cities or the other states. That's what we do. Actually, you do see urban inner city renewal programs in some of the cities. We have seen it in Ahmedabad that, the heritage areas have been provided with TDRs to conserve the living heritage, and that tradable development rights have been used to be sold for receiving zones where there's high rise development. So that is one way of preserving the heritage. At the same time, the nature of inner cities and old cities could be slightly different. They were car-free cities that time. Therefore, the lanes are very narrow, and also that is cooler places. If you look at them, usually the buildings itself serve as shade for each other, and the temperatures of these areas could be less than what it is otherwise in the modern cities. So I think it's about marking these areas and treating them. It's like differential bylaws. You don't treat everything at par. So this is a very important knowledge base which has to go to all the cities. That a city is not one unit. City is agglomeration of several dynamics. So there could be a heritage area, there could be an area which is coming up recently. There could be a very green area, there could be an area which is industrial. So in industrial area, you need to bring in affordable housing which is close to the industry. In an inner city area, if it is a very low density development but it is service lands, you may have to kindle redevelopment by giving higher FSIs but adding more streets, by appropriating land from the private plots. At the same time, creating transit linkages, creating water infrastructure linkages, all that. So the way you play it around is, you have to see where what will fit and how you will realize it through various urban design and urban planning tools.
And coming back to Prime Minister's post-budget webinar where he threw some light on increasing role of futuristic technology in the field of urban development, where the Prime Minister also requested startups to find new and innovative ways and technology that can transform the realm of urban planning. What is your view on this?
See, if there is one big lighthouse for us, that is the startups, the youngsters, the young generation which has taken up the challenge of solving many problems in a very disruptive and cost-effective and very, very practical manner. I must say in Amrit too, we are funding startups and there are 75 startups which are working with the cities. Amazing solutions they have shown. Like there's a small robot which goes through the pipe and predicts which part of the pipe will break before it breaks. So you don't need to actually replace all the pipes. If you replace that part of the pipe, then you are done with that pipe replacement there and it almost saves 75% of the cost. There's another technology. You see, you talk about smart meters. They are very costly. But there's a startup which has done, you may have a meter of 20 years old. They put a AI layer on it and make it smart. I mean, amazing solutions have come up. There are people who rainwater harvesting, you think that there has to be a sand and gravel. Somebody has made a console which is around 4,000 rupees and within 7,000-8,000 rupees you are able to completely filter the water properly and store it under the tank without any complication. It's like a get it, fit it and you are done. Even in a house, water can be treated and reused. That kind of treatment mechanisms have been found out for urban water. Similarly, in planning also a lot of innovations can be done by students, youngsters and all. So I think we are in safe hands. These startups we are supporting, Honorable Minister approved and started supporting these startups. 5 lakhs we have given already, 20 lakhs is per startup and we are linking up to the city. What they need is the entry into the government system to prove their solutions so that the technology will come to the systems of the city. At the same time, these people will get to show their skills and progress. And that is how it is going to prosper.
In the concluding stage of our discussion, I would like to know how urban planning is about to establish a climate resilient city.
See, what is climate resilience? As much as you don't create pollution load or carbon footprint, you are becoming climate resilient. So you need to keep clean air, clean water and also green spaces to absorb the carbon emissions from the overall urbanization. Ayodhya is planning a thermal comfort or heat stress mapping and they are developing green spaces to absorb the negative effects of development of the buildings. That has been integrated into their planning. Another way of doing it is, see today what is happening is you have bus corridors. And these bus corridors in the center of the city and there is a very low density development because this development happened before 70 years, 80 years, 100 years, 200 years. Now these corridors, if you re-look at them and provide for higher density, then automatically people don't need to take cars. Buses can become the way of life. But they have to live on those corridors. They have to walk 50 meters or 100 meters and get a bus. They have to walk 200 meters and get a metro. If you are able to put public transit in the center of city development and give a quality transit, it cannot be very bad, and reliable, accessible and affordable and easy to use transit and densify those corridors. Like metro corridors, transit-oriented development, we are saying, but still in Delhi we yet to realize a lot of benefits of it. So I think now the push is coming. If you are able to keep the cities compact, then you are becoming climate resilient. Because if you spread too much, then water bases, your green areas is going to shrink. So cities have to have a strong green buffer around them. And to protect that, you have to make cities which are compact. If you connect a household to a transit, and if the transit is easy to use, then that is how a city should be. And this is where we have to now focus our micro actions and get that urban plan. This is what our leader is saying, that let us look at climate resilient cities. So you have to work on water angle of the city. You have to work on pollution emissions and absorption angle in terms of green spaces, how we are going to do. You have to look at how your people are moving, by what they are moving, and how do you bring them to a system which is reliable for all the people to move. Like in Tokyo, if you have to go to any place, you cannot ensure that by car you will reach in time. But you can 100% ensure that you will reach in public transit in time. We need to go up to that level to make our cities climate resilient. And that needs a very concerted action. And that is what we would be doing through urban planning for climate resilience.
Indeed. With your insightful inputs, we are concluding this session. And thank you so much for joining us on All India Radio.
Thank you so much.
You are listening to an exclusive interview with D. Thara, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, on envisioning urban planning and infrastructure development for Amrit Kaal. The interviewer was Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.